should thank the conference organizers, especially EAMENA project at Oxford, Ikram Athar, and their partners. I'm willing to talk about a model of settlement in Persian Plateau and also its aspects and challenges. It has always been hard to define the buffer zone and determine the core zone for some historic sites associated with historic gardens. One problem is related to the common misunderstanding and the limitation of the garden into an enclosed area, which is completely wrong in the plateau of Iran. Another problem is usually due to the lack of understanding of the integrity of elements related to garden and its area, and the fact that the threatening factors are misunderstood. For a better view, I should refer to Fin Kuchak area, which is near Kashan. According to Hassan Qumi's description in 10th century after Christ, Fin has a historical background dating back to Beshtas, a Achaemenid dynasty, a semi-mythological dynasty in Iran. The region is connected with some sites and from Paleolithic to Islamic period. It seems that the region from a very far-reaching era has embraced various settlements in different ways. I believe all of these sites include Kaftarkhun area, for example, in this area. The hill of Qale Ziyarat, Sefidab, Sialk, Fin, and Islamic Kashan are various aspects of this settlement and should not be separated from each other. But the subject of my discussion is a recent version of agricultural settlement, which should be considered as a habitat related to Qanat. When we scroll through the area, we find sets of agricultural related habitats that are linked to the Qanat. The accuracy in the elements forming these fields, the layout, arrangement, and location of the settlement represent a unity in pattern. Therefore, the question arises whether these fields and environmental units have had a wider dimension, especially according to Kalantar Zarabi's outline in Mir'at al-Qasan, mentioning that these habitats have played a major role in the economy of the region. In this case, after some small sample like the farm of Abbasabad Bala at top left corner, we must first look at another example called Farabad Garden and Farm in Borzabad, close to Kashan, at bottom right corner. The elements of farms and small habitats are also visible here, but the more important example that I'm considering is Fin Garden and its area. Beyond the functions, the general pattern of the mentioned small settlement can also be seen in Fin, although it is clear that the ancient region like Fin, which is the bed for royal garden, has a wider and more impressive landscape. Its elements are mountain or highland, spring and qanats, Mazharkhane, or a place of entry and appearance of water in the garden, royal gardens, square and avenue, and of course a set of gardens and fields. This historic landscape also includes an older garden or Bagh Kohne, which is a sign for the background of the mentioned pattern. This ancient habitat complex, which is complemented with other elements such as flood walls and numerous water mills, is not accidental, at least on the scale of the former garden. It is also a pattern that other examples of it are recognized in, for example, Tabas, Mahan, and Yaz. All of them are around the central desert of Iran. Therefore, it was not just a response to a situation in Kashan. For example, we can see the repetition of the Fin's pattern in the area around the Shazda Garden in Kerman, Dolatabad Garden in Yazd, and Gulshan Garden in Tabas. In all three new cases, the center is a royal or governmental garden that is irrigated through canets. In addition, the mentioned area that have a similar pattern to Finn includes elements such as mountain or higher lands, infertile plains around the settlement, affiliated farms and gardens, water mills, and the residential area, avenues, and historical roads and squares. It is also a model that can be identified among various systems of settlement in Iran. This system, which reveals the spirit and meaning of the garden on the Persian plateau, has become widely used in Finn and some other similar settlements like historic farms or mazra'e around Kashan, which I showed them before. Therefore, its protection is vital. And of course, it should be clear that to what extent these challenges and threats will affect the mentioned settlement system. The presented royal and governmental examples and of course, simpler examples are small or large samples of a habitat. Thus, according to Charter, the Conservation of Historic Towns and Urban Areas, Washington, 1987, it is possible to recognize their character and characteristics. Other charter and doctrinal texts can also provide a framework for identifying the characteristics of the target's area. Accordingly, the overall composition of the ancient habitat of Finn or similar examples are shaped by minor pattern, whether urban or rural, the macro pattern, or the manner of relationship between the area and the environment, the texture and physical aspect of the sub-areas, functions and uses, as well as the indicator elements, including constructed or the natural. In fact, this division helps us to identify not only the target habitat, but also its territory. Now let's take a closer look at Finn. The shape of the region is recognizable in its original status until 1980s. The mentioned aerial photograph shows the Finn's outskirt, which is a royal agriculture habitat. Representation of the elements and components of the proposed landscape, which is based on the EAMENA database, illustrate the close relationship between the main elements of the complex. In addition, we have to consider the fabric formed by the bases of other gardens, which are based on the water of Suleiman Spring or Tambali Kanat. Along with these important gardens, many other gardens have shaped the fabric of the area. For example, you can see in this, the fabric. Through Google Images, you can see a wide range of changes. The massive changes that began with the construction of the highway affect the different aspects of the area, but the oldest one is the construction of Amir Kabir Street instead of historical access. This is Amir Kabir Street. Instead of a historical access to the area. Apart from the damage to the aforementioned road, the possibility of continuing it to the unpublished planning to the path on the other side of the highway can expand the scope of changes and challenge the nature of the area on the highlands. Construction in the lands and gardens is another serious challenge. For example, the mere housing can distort, the mere housing is in this part. The mere housing can distort the region's border, and it challenges the fact that water of Suleiman Spring has a limitation for development of the area. Moreover, the construction inside the existing garden can lead to the destruction of the urban or rural fabric and its shape and pattern. The construction of a stadium on the highlands overlooking the garden has affected the mountain landscape or mountain landscape and the logic of settlement too. All of this damage have undermined parts of the value of the region, but the main challenge is the change of land use in the fields around the area, because it will completely destroy the layout and fabric of settlement system, undermine its authenticity, and seriously damage its integrity. The mentioned damages in Finn and also visible in other cases, for example, crossing the highway from the territory of Shazde Garden, where the remains of the historic avenue have been cut off by the construction of a new highway in this area. Or around the Garden of Dolatabad, that the development of housing in farmland and dove to the garden has changed the face of region and has destroyed the historical elements like the historical path. Also in Tabas, where the construction has destroyed gardens' natural environments. Here is the old garden. Compare it with from 40 years ago. Or natural environment, and has changed the concept of the garden as the first livable point. In this case, according to the main feature of the desired area, which is its span more than anything else, we have to pay attention to the integrity and the necessity of preserving it. Because without deep attention to the integrity and constituents of the areas mentioned above, the concept of an environmental pattern will be reduced to one and only a settlement, while the repetition of this pattern indicates the importance and efficiency and its antiquity. Integrity has been addressed in Article 14 in the Charter of Venice. However, emphasis was on the area of a monument as required by the time of editing and adopting the Charter. In recommendation concerning the safeguarding and contemporary role of historic areas, 1976, it was mentioned about preserving the integrity between rural communities and their natural setting. In addition, in the Declaration of San Antonio, 1996, as an interpretation of NARA document on authenticity, 1994, where proofs of authenticity were considered, and along with the reflection of true value, context, identity, and use and function, integrity is also mentioned. Therefore, the importance of integrity in preserving authenticity is also evident. In this case, the declaration asks, is the site fragmented? How much is missing, and what are the recent additions? A solution to prevent these challenges and threats is the development of preventive protection through defining a system of buffer zones, which is often difficult to justify and does not get much support, and is considered as an obstacle to the development of the region. However, recognizing all the works related to the region and emphasizing their different values and the role they play in the settlement system may help for a better and more accurate understanding of the values of the region and provide a new justification for preventive conservation programs. In addition, the extent and distribution of habitats, elements, and components make it necessary to pay attention to a system for pathology and sites permanent monitoring. In this system, it is essential to be able to record and characteristics and the status of each element or area and provide the context for finding related elements or unknown features. This is what the EAMENA program can do. Additionally, outputs of this program, such as integrated maps and related information, allow lowest destructive interventions. From this perspective, at least for the areas discussed here, EAMENA can help by the representation of an elements and related complications and the relation between them, both to preserve the internal integrity of the habitats between its elements, and to preserve its integrity with other important elements around the mentioned pattern or external integrity. Thank you very much.